Well, my position's not a secret because I've voted on all the items that have come before us as a city commission. Um, I want to be clear with the people as well as with you that I support conceptually the downtown efforts because I do believe that it's important that we have a downtown that's thriving, a downtown that has energy, and a downtown that draws people. Whether it's you and I coming there for a show or to dine out with our family, or whether it's visitors from out of town, as Executive Inn used to be so prominent when you left town and you met somebody that had been, oh, you're from Owensboro, well, that's where the Executive Inn is, and everybody knew where that was. And Executive Inn and Moonlight were the two things that out of towners could identify with when you mentioned Owensboro. And I certainly support conceptually that effort. As is very well known, most of my votes have been no towards like the funding of the downtown. I really think that was handled very poorly. I think politically it was driven to be done like it was done because the mayor counted his votes, and between fiscal court and the city commission, he knew he had his votes, and it's like, let's get this done right now. I won't say that it entered into his mind, hey, we got 2 years for people to forget, because I don't think people have forgotten. But I do believe that he knows, having been city manager for several years, he knew that there is a tendency to put off when something is right before an election. I've been a commissioner now for 10 years out of the last 12, and I certainly have witnessed that. And sometimes with my own frustration that something that ought to be voted on is put off for 6 months because, oh, it's too close to the election. The primary's already been experienced, and so let's just wait. But there were two things with the downtown. In your question is twofold. It's implementation and funding. And with the funding aspect, to hit so hard and to say, hey, we're going to do this 80 million, boom, and we've got to do all of it. We can't just do it. Let's do the convention center. And then let's plan to do these other parts. It was all or nothing, and that concerned me because, as you all know, in the newspaper business, I mean, when you all sit down and you talk about your planning for the day or for the year or your 5-year plan, there's so many things that I'm sure you all sit here and dream about. Oh man, it'd be great to be able to do this. And you don't do it because the numbers just aren't there yet. You've got to wait, and you've got to prioritize. And that's one thing that I think wasn't done in this from a funding standpoint. I talked with a gentleman the other day who was a staunch advocate for, and he approached me. He knows me well. He's got a business downtown, and he asked me, he said, this was 2 years ago, right when we were voting on it. He said, Chart, I sure hope you'll support this. It's something we need to have happen. And I told him, I said, I hope that at this point, I'm not going to vote for the funding. And I said, I hope that in 10 years I can look back and say, man, I'm glad the rest of the commission did, But my concern, I asked him just a couple of weeks ago, I saw him, and I asked him, I said, so how are things downtown? His energy was almost gone. His so concerned because he said there's no parking. And the parking money is what we use to buy the Executive Inn property. And I remember the mayor saying, oh, well, it's got all that parking places, 17 acres, well, we'll be able to alleviate the parking problems. Walmart didn't put their out on 54. Walmart didn't put their parking over in Kohl's property. They put it right next to Walmart. The same with Kohl's. They put their parking right outside their door. That's how we are as a culture, is we want to be able to drive right up there. The gentleman that I referenced, he said, we've lost customers because they'll set up a meeting with us, they'll drive around 3 times, can't find parking, drive home, call, say, I'm not going to use you, And he mentioned that there's a couple people in there group that's thinking of opening an office out on 54 because they're tired of hearing that call. They're tired of getting that message, that feedback. And so the parking is when I look at the 80 million, I look at it as we're changing the streets as though, and like this morning at the chamber meeting, talk about walkability of the community. Conceptually, that's good, and I don't have a problem with going there. And certainly from a wellness aspect, it's critical that we get more exercise. But parking is a real problem. It's a real issue. And if we don't address that, downtown will not thrive. It will not succeed, despite how much dollars we're putting into the facilities. And I have a concern with it. The other thing I'll throw in, I know I'm getting long on my time, is there has to be buy-in from the private sector. If you look at what the activity years ago that went out, when South Frederick was the place to be, now it seems like 54 is the place to be if you're a business, a retail business. Government put almost nothing out there. The private sector identified that that's the place to be, and they rushed to it. And government had to come in after the fact and widen streets and that kind of thing. We're still dealing with that on South Frederick with Southtown Boulevard. But we have to have private sector buy-in, or the downtown will just be a handful of nice buildings that aren't used very much.
You had mentioned that you were concerned with an all-or-nothing approach and funding it all at once as opposed to funding it as you can over time.
Right.
The county is contributing $20 million to the event center. The city has agreed to contribute $7 to $8 million to that. If the event center comes in with a higher price tag, would you be in favor of increasing the county's investment in that property?
Well, obviously, I'm not as familiar with the county's budget as I am the city. If there is money in the county's budget to where we can increase the county's contribution, I would not give an absolute no today. But if you're asking me, would I be in favor of raising the taxes because we didn't raise the taxes enough to begin with, the answer is going to be no.